If you're low income, a veteran, you collect Social Security, Medicare, you're going to want to watch this video all the way through, as yesterday during my live stream, I let people know something happened. I wasn't really quite sure, but I was starting to see articles coming out left and right about major concerns, about cuts to all of these different programs and groups that were unfolding. Now, I got some time to find it. Here it is. Take a look. Biden dings McCarthy for Wall Street speech. What are MAGA Republicans in Congress doing? As it is a nonstop battle right now between President Joe Biden and Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. The two are not even willing to speak to each other over the debt ceiling negotiations. And President Joe Biden confesses, listen, we could be, for the first time in our U.S. history, looking at a U.S. default. And this could be devastating across the board. And in addition to that, in this speech, he also says that what Republicans are going to be proposing for their compromise in their negotiations is even more cuts. So he's saying it is not looking good. Now, like I said, I shared with you in a previous video, Kevin McCarthy blasted Biden. Now, Biden is blasting back. And a lot of people are saying that these two are getting further apart. And it's looking less and less likely like there's going to be an agreement. And this means more and more people are going to get cut and get hurt. Now, take a look. This came out yesterday. During a speech, Biden signed executive orders aimed at expanding access to long-term care and child care. And in that speech, this is where he made those statements. And that is why articles started coming out like this. Kevin McCarthy, Joe Biden, and the deeply unserious debate over the debt ceiling. And I know that we are all hoping and praying that members of Congress, Kevin McCarthy, Joe Biden, understand the severity of what potentially could be unfolding here and how many people are going to be hurt, literally millions of Americans, if they don't come to an agreement. So we will see. I am hopeful that they will put all of this debate and foolishness to an end and get something done for the American people. Now, I'm going to share with you the video footage and the articles to give you some context as to what's unfolding. And also, I mentioned in another video, if you're on Social Security, a new bill has just been presented, and it aligns almost exactly with the ideals of President Joe Biden. So we will see if this new bill gets some traction. Now, for some more information on that bill, be sure to stick around to the end, and I'll get you updated on Social Security as well. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, before we do, if you appreciate the updates, don't forget, do me a quick favor, smash the like button. Just takes a second, helps out the channel a ton. Thank you so much. And if you want to stay up to date, totally free, why not just hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and also shout out to all of the members. We launched the join button here on the channel. Just click it and you can be a supporter of the channel, get extra information, and also get direct access to me if you need some help. But with that being said, you guys, let's go ahead and dive right in and get you caught up on the latest. All right, so first, link in the description below to this article that just came out yesterday that says Biden dings McCarthy for Wall Street speech. What are MAGA Republicans doing in Congress? President Biden on Tuesday took a swipe at Speaker Kevin McCarthy for his remarks a day earlier on Wall Street, in which he laid out a plan for raising the debt ceiling into next year while also capping federal spending. Yesterday, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, went to Wall Street. Biden remarked, he did not tell the wealthy or the powerful on Wall Street that it was finally time for them to pay their fair share in taxes. That didn't come up, other than saying that they were going to renew the $2 trillion tax cuts. Instead, he proposed huge cuts to important programs that millions of Americans count on. He threatened to become the first speaker to default on our national debt, which took over 230 years to accumulate, Biden continued. He's threatened to be the first one to default on the debt, which would throw us into a gigantic recession and beyond unless he gets what he wants in the budget. Folks, you've got to ask yourself, what are MAGA Republicans in Congress doing? The comments are the latest in the ongoing back and forth between the White House and Kevin McCarthy over the debt ceiling, which Congress must raise in the coming months or risk an economically damaging federal default. McCarthy on Monday visited Wall Street in New York City, where he criticized Biden for the lack of communication on the issue. The speaker went on to say that the House Republican Conference would move forward with its own measure in the coming weeks to stave off a national default, but that outline quickly fell flat with the administration and congressional Democrats. So McCarthy has already said they're going to push through a bill in the House, but the Senate and the president are saying, don't even bother because we will stop it. McCarthy said the House would vote to lift the debt ceiling into 2024, which would punt the issue into the heart of the campaign season. He also said the forthcoming plan would seek to limit federal spending with proposals to return discretionary funding levels to 2022 levels and then limit the growth of spending over the next 10 years to 1% of annual growth without touching Social Security and Medicare. But yet again, if they do not come to an agreement, all of these benefits and provisions across the board are going to suffer. Negotiations between the White House and House Republicans over how to act on the debt limit, which caps how much money the Treasury can owe to cover the country's bills, are at a standstill. So that is where things currently are at. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the video footage so you can see it and hear it for yourself, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.
Folks, we know there's more to do. And yet yesterday, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, went to Wall Street. He did not tell the wealthy or the powerful on Wall Street that it was finally time for them to start paying their fair share of taxes. That didn't come up. Other than say they're going to renew the $2 trillion tax cut. Anyway, I won't. Instead, he proposed huge cuts to important programs that millions of Americans count on, millions of middle-class, suburban, as well as inner-city folks. He threatened to become the first speaker to default on our national debt, which took over 230 years to accumulate. He threatened to be the first one to default on the debt, which would throw us in a gigantic recession and beyond, unless he gets what he wants in the budget. Folks, you've got to ask yourself, what are MAGA Republicans in Congress doing? Because this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different deal. You know, the two presidents that warned most directly against playing with the national debt were Ronald Reagan. He spoke very, very passionately about that. And he came forward. And anyway, I won't. But, you know, why are they doing this? What's the purpose? The Speaker talked about limited spending, which sounds good. And by the way, I was able to cut the deficit by $1.7 billion in 2 years. And if we pass the budget I'm proposing, we'll lower the spending way beyond that just in the first. We're gonna lower the spending by $168 billion just because the way we've changed Medicare. Prescription drug costs. But let's take a closer look at what he didn't say. Critical programs for hardworking Americans, that ones they count on, will be slashed starting next year if he has his way. He didn't tell you the leading House Republican proposals would cut all the programs and discretionary spending by 22%. It would mean higher costs for child care, higher costs for preschool, higher costs for college. 200,000 children would lose access to Head Start slots. And even more would lose access to child care altogether. It would mean higher costs for housing, especially for older Americans, for veterans, people with disabilities, and families with children. Longer wait times for Social Security and Medicare benefits. Robbing seniors of their healthy meals. 30 million fewer veteran outpatient visits, leaving our brave warriors unable to get checkups, mental health services, and treatment for substance abuse disorders. Congress just passed the PACT Act, which I was very proud of, to help, it was bipartisan, to help veterans exposed to toxic burn pits like my son. And these cuts will make it harder for us to meet that sacred obligation to protect those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they return home. They would deny tens of thousands of people suffering from opioid epidemic and addiction the treatment they need for recovery. We're also planning other cuts as well. They'd cut 10 million people, including 4 million children, would lose food assistance programs. Changes to Medicaid would also cause millions of people to lose their health care. And now, what the Speaker didn't tell you is the MAGA Republicans in Congress are still supporting over $3 trillion in tax giveaways, overwhelmingly benefit the wealthiest Americans and the biggest corporations. I might add, we have now about 1,000 billionaires. You know what the average tax rate is? 3, T-H-R-E-E, percent. 3%. And their cuts to those critical programs I talked about won't go to reduce the deficit after all. They just pay for the rest of the MAGA Republican agenda. Massive tax cuts, giveaways that gear up for the rich and large corporations who acknowledge they don't need them all. Folks, if the MAGA Republicans in Congress won't ask the wealthy or big corporations to pay $1 more in taxes, but they'll make a 22% cut to programs across the board like education, scientific research, basic services people rely on. Then they should tell the American people what that means and why they're doing it. It means they want to go back to the same old trickle-down economic theories of the past, while we, the economy, have been growing from the middle out and the bottom up, is sidelined. Instead of investing in kids and cutting taxes for families with children, mega Republicans in Congress support more than $3 trillion in tax cuts and giveaways over the next 10 years toward those at the very top of the agenda, on the income agenda. You know, on the other hand, as I said in my first 2 years, we brought down the deficit by a record $1.7 trillion. And my budget I proposed, which I've laid out, would cut the deficit over the next 10 years by another $3 trillion. So I urge Congress to take the threat of default off the table. Pass my budget. If they don't pass, at least argue with what they don't like about it and let's vote on it. But in the meantime, we're not waiting around.
So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think that they're going to be able to come to some sort of an agreement here and get this done to help out the American people and avoid a national default, which we're hearing would be devastating? We have never defaulted in our U.S. history. Or do you think that there is going to be a compromise, but it could involve a lot of cuts across the board? Let me know what you think is going to happen. Now, in addition to that, speaking about Social Security and Medicare, as we had mentioned, I let you know there's a new bill that has just been proposed, and it aligns almost exactly with President Joe Biden's ideals and what he said he'd like to see. Now, to get more details on that bill, check it out right here. And I also cover for you the Social Security Expansion Act, and I compare that one to this one. And that particular bill presented by Bernie Sanders also has $200 per month increases suggested as well. And I covered that bill in another video in detail. So check it out on the channel. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.